Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing 11 books with you that are coming out this May. And these are a mix of YA fantasy, YA contemporary, and adult fantasy and fantasy romance. So first I'm going to talk about the YA fantasy books, and I'm going to talk about these in order of release date from soonest to latest. Book number 1 comes out on May 6th, and it's The Glittering Edge by Alyssa Villaire. And this is book 1 in a duology. So the description of this book says that this is for fans of slow burn romance, found family, small town angst, he falls first, and misunderstood heroes. Our main character in this one is Penny Emberly, and she lives in the town of Idlewood, Louisiana, and in this town there are two famous feuding families. And they are the DeLucas and the Barons. And the DeLucas are witches, and it's said that decades ago they cursed the Baron family as revenge for a love gone tragically wrong. So now, if a Baron falls in love with you, you'll die. And Penny stays away from these two families because she wants nothing to do with this curse. But then her mother is in an accident that leaves her on the brink of death, and it seems like the cause might have been the curse. So now Penny is dragged into the drama of these two families. And so now, in order for Penny to save her mom, she has to get these two families to work together to try to break the curse. One of the individuals that Penny is going to be working with is Corey Barron, who is a star quarterback and whose mother was killed by the curse. And then from the DeLuca side, you have Alonzo, who, if he can break the curse, he can prove to everyone that he is not the monster or villain that they believe he is. And it seems like there might be a romance that's going to happen between Alonzo and Penny. Book number 2 also comes out on May 6th, and it's The Lost Queen by Aimee Phan. And this is book 1 in a duology that's inspired by Vietnamese lore, weaving magic, sisterhood, and self-discovery. So our main character in this one is Jolie, and she's a high school sophomore, and she is known for two things: her bizarre freakout at last year's swim meet, and her fortune teller grandfather with visions of dragons and earthquakes. And so those two things have led to her being a social outcast and to having no friends. However, her life takes a turn for the better when she saves the school's it girl, Hua. And Hua ends up taking her under her wing. They end up becoming friends, and as they grow closer, they unlocked long-lost powers, telepathic abilities, fluency in Vietnamese, and eerie premonitions. And they end up learning that they have ties to legendary queens and goddesses of ancient Vietnam. And this revelation ends up in them embarking on a journey that will determine the fate of the world. So book number 3 also comes out on May 6th, and it's The Enemy's Daughter by Melissa Poett. So this one is an enemies to lovers romantasy that is a retelling of the tale of Tristan and Isolde. Our two main characters are Isadora and Tristan. Isadora is a part of the 5 clans, whereas Tristan is a part of the Kingsland, and these two sides are at war with each other over land. And in this war, Isadora acts as a healer and Tristan is an assassin. And one day, Isadora stops an attack from Tristan, but as a consequence, she ends up being poisoned by his men with an arrow. And as she lies dying, Tristan offers to save her by using rare magic. But there is a catch. If Isadora agrees to be saved, then she will be bonded to Tristan. And she does agree because she doesn't want to die. And an unfortunate side effect of this bond is that if she admits her growing attraction to him, then he'll be able to see pieces of her memories, and he'll be able to get the information that would allow him to destroy the 5 clans. But the bond goes both ways, so she is going to open her heart to him and try to get the information that she needs to destroy his people before he can destroy her people. And so our story goes from there. Book number 4 also comes out on May 6th, and is His Face is the Sun by Michelle Jabez Corpora. And this is the first book in a trilogy that is inspired by ancient Egypt that is said to be filled with romance, magic, adventure, and horror. And I'm just going to read a little blurb from the description of this one. So the description reads, "Tensions run as hot as the Khamsin winds in the great kingdom of Katara. Rumors of the pharaoh's mysterious illness abound, and with them murmurs of rebellion grow. Meanwhile, in the quiet desert, a forgotten oracle begins to unfold, setting a dark prophecy into action and drawing together 4 strangers." So it seems like this one is going to be multiple perspectives, and it's going to follow those 4 different strangers. And so one of them is a princess, one is a priestess, one's a rebel, and one's a thief. and apparently only the 4 of them can save the kingdom from destruction. And the description of this one is reminding me a little bit of 5 Broken Blades, which I love this series, so I am very intrigued by this one. Book number 5, and the final YA fantasy book on this list, comes out in the US on May 20th, is Cruel is the Light by Sophie Clark. And so this one is already out in the UK. It came out in January, but it's just coming out in the US in May. So this is an enemies to lovers romantasy and is the first book in a duology. So in this one we have 2 main characters. Our first main character is Celine, who is a powerful exorcist who was trained at the Vatican. And our other main character is Jules, who is a powerful and unrivaled soldier on the battlefield. And the 2 of them, when they first meet, they don't trust each other at all, they don't like each other, but then they are forced to work together in order to uncover the truth behind a string of demon attacks that have been happening. And in order to conduct their investigation, Jules ends up posing as Celine's estranged fiancé. So with that fake engagement established, they end up heading off to the Vatican in search of answers, and our story goes from there. So now let's talk about book number 6 on this list. So this book is the only YA contemporary book that is on this list, and it comes out on May 13th and is the romance Rivalry by Susan Lee. So our main character in this one is Irene Parks, and she loves romance novels, and as such, she is an online reviewer of them, and she has a massive following. But even though she's read tons and tons of romance books, she has no real life dating experience. And so, at the start of the story, she is starting college, and so she decides that she is going to finally find her one true love, and in order to do so, she's going to use what she knows best, and those are romance book tropes. But then, things get complicated when Eileen's online book review rival and her biggest nemesis, Aiden, issues her a challenge, and he challenges her to see who can find love by trope first. But then, some things end up happening in their competition, and the 2 of them end up in a fake dating relationship, and so our story goes from there. So the last 5 books on this list are adult fantasy and fantasy romance books. So book number 7 on this list came out in the UK in January of this year, but is coming out in the US on May 6th. It is Modern Divination by Agajanian. So this is the first book in a duology, and is described as a magical cozy fantasy with witches featuring an academic rivals to lovers romance, found family, and yearning. So our main character in this one is 23-year-old Aurelia. She is a witch, but she has to keep the fact that she is a witch a secret from normal humans. And with her acceptance to the elite Cambridge University College, it seems like everything in her life is going according to plan. However, her carefully balanced life is threatened when her gift of green magic starts to inexplicably disappear. And to make matters even more complicated, someone has been hunting witches and stealing their powers. And unfortunately, the only person that can help her is her fellow witch and academic rival Theodore. And so the 2 of them end up seeking refuge with his family. But as Aurelia grows closer to Teddy, the witch hunter also draws nearer. So book number 8 comes out on May 13th and is A Curse Carved in Bone by Danielle Jensen. So this is the second and final book in a duology. So the first book is A Fate Inked in Blood, and I read this one last year and really enjoyed it. And this ended off on a little bit of a cliffhanger, so I am curious to see how things are going to conclude in the second book. So this book is a Norse-inspired fantasy romance, and it follows our main character, Freya. And I do have a reading vlog of this book on my channel if you want to know more about it, and I will link that down below. But in case you don't know much about this, I will just read the little blurb on here to give you an idea about what the series is about. So the blurb says, a shield maiden blessed by the god battles to unite a nation under a power-hungry king while fighting her growing desire for his fiery son in this Norse-inspired fantasy romance. Book number 9 comes out on May 20th and it's Behooved by M. Stevenson. The description of this one describes this book as a charming, slow-burn romantasy featuring a duty-bound noblewoman with a chronic illness, a prince who'd rather be in a library than on a throne, and a magical ride through a world of cozy enchantment. So our main character in this one is noblewoman Bianca. In order to avoid a war, she ends up marrying a neighboring kingdom's heir. Unfortunately for her, the prince that she marries is cold, aloof, and seems to hate her right away. And then, to make matters even worse, on their wedding night, an assassination attempt goes wrong, and it ends with her husband being transformed into a horse. And so Bianca kind of panics, and she flees the kingdom with her husband, who's now a horse. And they learn that when the sun sets, her husband becomes human again, so he is cursed to be a horse by day and a human by night. And they also learn that Bianca has been framed for his murder. And so the story goes from there, with the two of them trying to figure out a cure for her husband's curse and trying to save the throne from usurpers. So book number 10, and the book that I'm probably the most excited for that is on this list, comes out on May 20th. It's The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. So this book is by the same author that wrote the One Dark Window duology, and I loved this duology, so I am really excited to read this new book by her. So this one is described as a gothic mist-cloaked tale of a young prophetess who is forced on an impossible quest with the one infuriating knight whose future is beyond her sight. So our main character in this is Sybil, and she is a diviner. And as a diviner, she has dreams of the future. And she lives with other diviners in the Great Cathedral, and in order to live there, they promise themselves and their services to the cathedral for 10 years. So at the start of the story, just as her and the other diviners' 10 years of service is almost up, a mysterious knight arrives at the cathedral. And he is apparently rude and has no respect for Sybil's visions. However, Sybil's fellow diviners start to disappear one by one, and she has no choice but to ask for this knight's help in finding them. And so our story goes from there. So book number 11, and the final book on this list, comes out on May 27th, and is A Fate Forged in Fire by Hazel McBride. And this is the first book in a Celtic-inspired fantasy romance duology. So for this one, I think that the little blurb about the book describes it very well, so I am just going to read that. So it reads, "To become the first queen in centuries, a powerfully blessed blacksmith must use her wits and fire magic to overthrow the corrupt powers ruling her kingdom, while also fighting her growing desire for one of her dragon-riding adversaries." So the description of this one is giving me Quicksilver vibes, but with dragons instead of fairies. So I'm very intrigued by this one. So those are 11 books coming out this May. Let me know down below which ones caught your eye. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye!